Lindsay, thank you, first of all, for agreeing to share a little bit about your experience and sharing Santana's story. We do appreciate it. Our intention is to kind of educate folks about the things they might be able to do to be much more proactive in water safety awareness. Um, if you don't mind, can you walk me through your experience? Your story is unique in that Santana's situation started out as a near fatal drowning and eventually turned into an actual drowning. So, can you walk me just through your story?
Sure. Basically, December 16th, 2006, we got a phone call that no parent would expect to hear when your child's staying with family members over the weekend. And that was that Santana was in a hospital. They weren't sure what happened at the time. Tape was around the house, so we just rushed up to the hospital. He was at St. Joe's at the time. And what had happened is he was left with a babysitter and couldn't find him. Apparently, instead of checking the pool first, they were in the backyard, went through the house, and eventually was found at the bottom of the pool. Actually, by that time, he was floating. And there was a stroller, so he was playing out there, pushing a stroller around. And thankfully, the babysitter did know CPR, immediately started the CPR. My oldest son, which was 4 at the time, went in, called 911, and got paramedics there. By the time we got to the hospital, we were sat into like a banquet room and told that it was give or take whether he was going to live through the night. He was 30 minutes cardiac arrest, so clinically dead, 45 minutes without oxygen. And they could tell this by blood toxicity, and they assumed that he was underwater. You know, police reports would show like 2 to 3 minutes by what she had said, but with the toxicity, they were thinking like 20 minutes underwater. So we had a miracle because he did live. He was revived. He was in ICU for 10 days. He was on the ventilator. I think he came off day 5 or 6. So we're like, he has a fight in him, you know, but still in a coma. We're like, he's going to come out of this. We were surrounded by prayer and support and the church coming in and out, and just so much people gathered and rallied together. It was during the Christmas season, so we spent the hospital, or our time in the hospital there. Then it was time to take him home on February 1st after being transitioned to a transitional place, Los Niños, to where we learned to take care of him. When I was told I was taking him home, I didn't understand because Santana wasn't awake. Santana wasn't the boy that I dropped him off with the Friday before his accident. His eyes weren't open. He didn't respond. He was tight. His brain had him all balled up. I had to learn things I never thought I'd have to learn, such as positioning him, doing exercises to loosen him up. He didn't eat anymore. He was already had 2 surgeries, one to tie his esophagus around his stomach to keep from vomiting and choking, and then another for a G-tube. So when I said he's not awake, how can I take him home? They said, this is what you got. He might not ever wake up. So 45 minutes trying to get him situated in a car seat because he was so stiff, and getting him to bed, you know, I'm like, this is my new life. Everything's going to change. So when we got home, we immediately had to change everything around. We were in a house with all these stairs. We had to clear out my office, make it his room. He was very involved, 24-hour care. Couldn't leave his side, constantly choked. We had a suction machine that like helped get all his junk out because he couldn't swallow or get it out himself. We had to deep suction his lungs, go through the nose, down to the lungs. I mean, instantly I became a nurse. Something I never wanted to do, never had a desire to do, but I was forced to do. And with that, my life changed. Like at the time I was going to film school, I wanted to do editing. There's all the stuff I wanted to do, all the stuff I wanted to do for my life. I was only 25 when the accident happened. At that point, I gave up everything, and he became my everything. He became my life. He became what I live for every morning. My life consisted of having nurses in and out of my house, therapists in and out of my house. We had at least 5 to 6 people daily, in, out, working on him, making him be the best that he could be. In 2009, we tried everything with him. I'm like, I have to have my boy back. That's all I could focus on. I go, this water took him away. I couldn't get over. I missed his smile. I never saw a smile again. And I did everything. We did so much research. We took him to Mexico for stem cells. We did therapy in Florida, therapy in California. We traveled all over. And whether that sustained him, I'll never know. But Santana was a fighter, is what I do know. He went through a lot. He taught me a lot. He had 6 back surgeries. One to put a rod in for horrible scoliosis that he had, then an infection, then it came off, then an infection, it's back and forth. So with that, I became more of a nurse learning to do IV medicine. And it was all timing. I couldn't, when we had the pump, I couldn't go anywhere. He had to have those certain times. So once again, I had to learn all this stuff again, but he kept fighting and he kept making small improvements. Out in public, nobody would recognize these improvements, but for me, I was gaining eye contact. We got to the point where we had an amazing therapy team where he was learning to communicate by hitting a switch. So with the iPad, he can make his own choices. And that was exciting when in reality we're like, we should be excited he got a touchdown or this and that. Instead, we're excited that he had 2 choices and made a choice. So, but we were finding that he was really brilliant, and then, getting math skills and stuff through this. But at the same time that we were making gains, we were losing him. His body started to deteriorate. And about a year, about 2013, I started questioning doctors. What does end of life look like? And they're like, no, you're not there, you're not there. Nobody wants to talk about that, I don't think. And I'm like, okay, every kid's different. I just gotta go with it. But I was just seeing change in him. And sure enough, he started getting C. diff, with all his infection, and he was on so much antibiotics. So then C. diff, he was just, constantly, his gut was just not handling stuff. So we were going through that over and over again. And then next thing you know, he's really sick, but it's not the first time. We're in and out of hospitals with pneumonia. I mean, that's one thing, you think a brain injury, but there's so much that goes along with it. You're in and out of hospitals with illnesses because they're so sensitive, and then it controls your muscles, so you start losing things. He had drop foot, so getting him to stand in a stander or anything was impossible. You get it's just so hard. If we're in public, we got to cover his, face, and he missed so much school, not because he was sick, but because other kids came all sick, and it's we could never risk it for him. Unfortunately, he was around kids, whether that's where he picked it up from or not, but what they did find out was we thought, oh, pneumonia, and they wanted to send him home, but I'm like, I came in by ambulance with 105.7 fever. I'm not going home. And normally I would fight to go home. I can handle this. Just let me go home. I go, I don't feel right going home. There's something more than pneumonia going on. So they kept him and then eventually swabbed him, and his influenza B. So at that point, his body couldn't fight it. His left lung was totally collapsed. And we did 3 x-rays during that week, and then it was a rainy day. I could still see it. It was a rainy day when a team of doctors came in and sat and talked to us about hospice. And that was really hard, and I didn't make a decision until I saw another x-ray. I'm like, I have to see another x-ray. And of course, nothing changed. And I made the choice to do hospice, but with the thought of, okay, we're gonna go to Ryan House for the weekend, and then we're going home. We're just never gonna go to the doctor again. They're gonna come to us. Well, our plan was to go home that Monday, but when we got there, the first night they go to turn him just to readjust him, and when they turned him on his good lung, he couldn't breathe, he was gasping. And it was the scariest thing I've ever seen. They had to stop foods and everything because he wasn't digesting. It was starting, basically choking on it. So at that point we started morphine, and then still thought maybe we'd still go home on Monday, but things went downhill. We thought what was gonna be fast, but Santana knew I needed the time and held on to me for 2 weeks and 2 more days. So I laid with him nonstop, and at that time I thought when he took his last breath that, you know, influenza, pneumonia, and C. diff took him out. But when I got the death certificate, it was secondary to drowning. Didn't mention being sick or anything. 7 years later, drowning killed my son. And that's what a lot of people don't stop to think about with non-fatal, like, oh, they survived. Because generally you hear in the stories, you know, that they're in the hospital, and nobody thinks of what goes on after that. But it changes your life, flips you upside down completely. Some people are lucky. They do get to walk away with their kids. But in my case, where it's severe, you have a constant reminder that your kid's not who he was, not because he was born that way, but because he wasn't watched or there wasn't the proper barrier. And had there been a fence around that pool, had the babysitter never left his side, we wouldn't have lost Santana due to drowning. I mean, it's always possible to get sick or other things happen to kids too, but this could have been completely preventable.
Is there a day that goes by that you don't ask? I mean, had there been a pool, had the babysitter been on it, I would imagine that that's. I don't have any. I can't imagine having the strength to deal with those questions on a daily basis. Do the questions come, or at some point, do you just accept it is what happened, and how do I move on?
It was one of those things. Santana cried the night we left. Like, he did not want to go with Grandma and Grandpa that night. And that's not like him. And it rings through our head all the time. Like, it's like he knew, don't let me go. And he was never that type. He would go with anybody, very outgoing. And so that sticks in our head, seeing those tears. And that's the last time, like, you know, and as we were in the hospital, we got like pictures back for our Christmas cards. We got all our cards back. And he was such a stinker that day. Like, every time they'd go to take a picture, he sticks his finger up his nose, or I'm like, Santana, stop, you know. But I look at those pictures and I smile, and then I cry at the same time because it's the last memory I have of his smile. And it's gone, and I do think of that. And when I think of August and Drowning Impact Awareness Month, I always hashtag I'm aware, because and I'm impacted, because we lived through a life that we, you know, you don't think you deserve, or, you know, nobody deserves a life like this. Nobody. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, because there is nothing worse than watching your child suffer and you can't do anything about it. And knowing that it's something preventable, but it's also something like the first question everybody asks me, would you do the babysitter? Did you just want to like kill her? And it's like, it's not going to change anything. This is my life. It happened in whatever order for whatever reason. Doing whatever to her isn't going to change anything, and she's probably going through her own issues. I can imagine. I know I would have hated it if it was somebody else's kid that I was watching. So forgiveness is all you can do at that point, but it's easy to forgive and still get angry. Like, it's something so simple. Like, how, you know, it's so simple to watch a kid. How do you lose when you only have 2 kids with you? But it's not going to change anything. And honestly, by the time I got to Santana's death and after I lost Santana, I had the 7 years of him, like his teacher put it best, that he was like the strong, silent type. He said so much without a word. And I miss who that Santana was. Like, of course, I'd never want him to have to go through all that again. But whenever I was frustrated or had a bad day, I just go to Santana. You can't be mad around him. He's that sweet, angelic face. Just pick him up and lay with him. And I miss that. And that's why I went into special education, because I just miss the innocence of, you know, Santana and looking into him. But it hurts to know that it's something like that could be prevented. Even in my grief group, there's a few drownings that were like, they instantly died. And my heart hurts, because it's like, I at least had time. But also, people don't understand, just because I had time, I had to deal with 2 deaths. I lost Santana, who he was born to be, and then I lost him again, who I fell in love with and had to take care of. So basically, I lost 2 kids in one.
It seems like near fatal or fatal, there's no easy solution. You're going to be dealing with grief one way or another. What do you want people to take away from Santana's story? I think you touched on it already, awareness, but can you just reiterate some of that again?
Well, of course, like when you have a pool, 100%, so many people like, well, I read comments. Like when there's drownings and stuff, I'll read comments on the news just to make myself mad sometimes. Because so many people assume it'll never happen to them. But one of my near drowned mom friends had written a comment back on somebody that was just, accusing moms of being druggies or, whatever, that have this happen to them, and said, does your kid ever write on the wall? Does your kid ever get into your makeup or do something they're not supposed to? Because the time it took them to do that is the time it takes them to go to that pool, fall in, and get it in their lungs. And a lot of parents don't think about that. And yes, proper barriers and everything will help that, but you do have to go to the bathroom once in a while and everything. And so saying to have your eyes on them 100% of the time in the house, we all live, but when you're out by the pool, put the phones down, put the book down. It's not important, because not only are you watching your child for their life, but you're making memories too. So that's the biggest thing. Like, I'll go to the pool with my kids, and I look around, and so many parents are just on the ledge, expecting these lifeguards, yeah, they're fine, whatever, reading their books. And I want to go up to them and say, you're missing memories, and you're missing out on stuff, and don't think that one lifeguard is going to save, everything. Just, if you're going to be there with your kids, be there. And more often than not, I hear of it happening at barbecues where there are people around, and everybody thinks everybody is watching everybody else, So the biggest thing is having that person, the water watcher. And if that water watcher needs to go get food or the bathroom, to tell somebody else, like, pass it on. Please, can you keep an eye until I get back? And I think that's really important to know and do also, because there's nothing, once your child slips away, there's nothing you could do to bring it back. I mean, I know from experience, hours of therapy, tons of money trying to get it back, and it's gone.